Cool. Well, thanks, Alex, Colina. I appreciate the opportunity to share something I'm quite passionate about. I think a lot of people have followed it over the last couple of years that we've been doing the Wild Coast Crossing. I'm going to give you a bit of the history behind it, why we do it, some of the plans going forward. We've got some big things planned, a couple of curveballs this year, but we hope to make it quite a big and something that adds a lot of value to communities that often get forgotten along the way. So a couple of things I'm just going to try and go through is just where it all started. All these things start with some seed that gets planted in our minds and it sort of takes shape. I'll speak a little bit about the Transkei, the Wild Coast, and the Pondoland, just where it sits and what it's all about. The current project, which is preserving Pondoland, which is, we're doing the Monteku Community Centre and the Wild Coast Crossing and how that all fits together, as well as the Wild Coast Crossing 2021 as well as 2022. So where it started, before beards and still double chins and big bellies, we used to try and run all these different races, and it got to a point where a lot of us were just quite race fatigued. And funny enough, I'd spoken to Safi and Mark de Haas and the guys were saying, sometimes you get tired of racing and you just, doing another sky run and doing another otter and, doing all these types of things. You're trying to look for different types of adventures that try and fill yourself with great memories and experiences. So a couple of us looked at it and we just thought, well, the Transkei is such an incredible area to actually go and explore, and it's like really untouched and underdeveloped. So we sort of 12 mates of us, we decided to do a run over 5 days, funny enough, from Port Edward to Port St. John's, and that was 4 days of running and 1 day of just beach boy bonanza, where we literally went crayfishing and fishing and diving and we got totally schooled on how to crayfish and things like that. But it was good fun. And our first day was literally from Port Edward to Mtentu, which was a short 25k run. Second day we ran to La Platana, and then from there through to Monteku, and then Monteku to Port St. John's, over the couple of days. But on the screen here, there's a couple of the memories from that initial trip, which really just created the fire and the hunger to spend more time on the Transkei. That the far left-hand pic is a gorge, it's sort of in La Platana area, which is incredible and untouched. And before we went down, they said only one group had ever been down that gorge. It's just absolutely incredible. I actually tried to fly my drone and didn't realize it had such incredible anti-collision avoidance software. The thing went absolutely haywire, just bouncing off all the high walls, and luckily one of my mates managed to pluck it out of the air before it crashed and burned. But it was a hell of an experience, a couple of hours going through a cliff there, but we ate crayfish, we drank beers with the locals, ran down uninhabited beaches. The only thing you see on the beaches is often cattle. You see odd occasional fishermen and the likes. And these are just some of the pics, of that original trip. And I'm sure you can see why it created such a hunger and a passion to spend more time in the area. What you can see on the bottom left-hand corner is there's a bunch of people. I don't know if you can see my mouse. We're actually having sundowners right just at the bottom there, sitting amongst those mottled rocks, which is called Champagne Rocks. Incredible place to run. Just that you run along with mottled rocks, and they've got the Transkei shower, which you can see in the upper pictures, which normally splashes over you as you're running. So there's incredible places to run and experience down that coastline. But then if we go back to what is the Transkei and where does it fit into the picture, I don't know how many people know about this. So just to give you a bit of the past, as you can see on the map, it's really the area that goes from Port Edward, which is the old KZN, so sort of the border, where I actually grew up in Port Edward, funny enough, all the way to East London, effectively. So the Transkei's meaning is beyond the Kei River, effectively, and it's the home of many Xhosa-speaking people. During the apartheid regime, it was an unrecognized state. So it's independent of South Africa, it has its own defense forces and all sorts of things, and then the capital is Mthatha. So now it's part of the Eastern Cape. Unfortunately, I think they maybe managed things better before it was the Eastern Cape, but now it's part of the Eastern Cape. Some famous people that came from that area is Mandela and Thabo Mbeki, and the capital was renamed and respelled to Mthatha from Umtata pre that date. Don't ask me why. But literally it's 310 k's of coastline, and it's called the Wild Coast as well, which is often referred to the Bermuda Triangle of South Africa. So it's really renowned for like massive seas, lots of shipwrecks, etc., which I'll touch on a little bit later. The Pondoland specifically, which I'm really passionate about, is a section more which is north of Port St. John's up to Port Edward. That's a 105-kilometer stretch of coastline, absolutely beautiful, not inhabited. It's got no big hotels really. It's got one or two lodges and things like that, but very, very little happening compared to the southern section where you get the coffee bays and all those more built up areas. Goes from the Umtamvuna River to the Mzimvubu River in Port St. John's. And there are a lot of big risks happening there. There's a planned N2 project which will put a massive highway down that entire coastline, which unfortunately would mean it'll start looking like another north coast or south coast of KZN, which is quite sad, if that does happen, because then it'll be another Margate, another Mshlanga, another Belita, etc. And then also the Zulubeni titanium mining, which they want to do similar to Richards Bay, where they want to literally, as you can see in that little picture, the whole sort of northern section from the M10 to estuary, they want to actually mine for titanium. It's massive, rich deposits. I mean, a lot of political killings and the likes down there in the past, where the ANC have given the rights to mining, which is quite sad. It's sad. It'll be 10, 15, 20 years of mining, and then they'll just destroy the coastline, and then the locals are left with very little. A few people would have been enriched, but that would be quite sad. So just the last bit in terms of why we're doing the Wild Coast Crossing, and that just the plan, the dream is trying to preserve the Pondoland. We just believe that you've got to do it in a sustainable way to try and preserve and uplift the local community by just showing them the incredible asset they've got, trying to make it sustainable, try and bring tourism into it in a low impact type way. And one of the ways we do that is through running, hiking, cycling through the areas. You've got the Pondo Trail Run, which I know Suyen did recently, and there's incredible ways to get out and just try and uplift the locals while doing it, which is incredible, at the same time preserving the incredible environment that they've got there, which is obviously very fragile. This is our goal this year. We're building the Monteku Community Center, which is providing a library, mobile clinic, meeting hall, Wi-Fi hubs, boreholes, etc. to the locals. And then that's really because there's absolutely nothing in this area. There's no clinics, there's no schools. They've got to walk miles and miles and miles. So my wife's charity, Pillars of Hope, this is what we actually building, for the community, which we're hoping will educate, empower, and then the people will try and protect the environment as a result. So this is one of the big things that we're trying to do, which has got the blessing of the chief of the area, which is Chief Faku, which we work hand in hand with. And these people don't burn things down, they don't break things, they really appreciate it, they're really humble, incredible people. So this is Wild Coast Crossing effectively. So every year we put a plan together. A lot of it's based on tides, on logistics, etc. Not everywhere has a place to stay. So this was 2021's plan, starting in Port Edward. We've run from north to south and south to north. Last year we had quite a horrific, windy, rainy, wet experience. This year, because of the prevailing winds changing, and the sort of June, July, that they sort of blow more in the from a north to south sort of direction, and then they switch around later in the year. We plan to run from Port Edward first, starting them from Mvuna all the way down to the Great Kar River. Day one was going to be front end loaded, 84 k's of running on day one, which is quite a big chunk. A lot of swimming, a lot of grasslands, etc. A bit of a shorter day two, going through Port St. John's to the other side, and then obviously getting sort of slightly longer and shorter days thereafter. But the biggest thing is we've always had this thing of covering the 310 k's over 4.5 days. So it's not for everyone. It's often 10 to 12 hours of running a day, continuous movement. There've only ever been 2 people that have ever finished the crossing. So that's myself and Andrew Jans van Rensburg who have done it. The other guys who have tried have never finished, because it's quite a taxing type run. This year we've got a couple of guys who had planned to do it. AJ Kylitz had, Taryn Van Niekerk, and a couple of other people. So we're growing it, but we always only want people to run who are going to add to the vibe, enjoy a beer, add value to the fundraising efforts, etc. So that's what it's really all about. But that's just how the plan goes. We often have bailout points, like it says these TO points that we put into the plan. We also have aid stations, which aren't really aid stations. It's just lodges where you can buy a beer or get a toasted salami or something like that. But I'll take you through some of that next couple of slides. Accommodation on the run. It's a combination. It's quite funny. We booked last year near the Kai River at the start of the run, and we booked this incredible place in the green. And we thought, wow, that sounds incredible, environmental. We got to the front gate and it said, private property, keep out unless you brought weed. As you can see on the gate there, it was quite a special place, bunch of hippies, but no, it was a hell of an experience. But the rest of the way, we stay at lodges like the Drifters Lodge shown. It's not Drifters, it's the Pondo Beach Camps now, which is owned by Wild Child Africa. We stay in incredible lodges like that, where we just sort of crash, have a bite to eat, have a couple of beers and drinks, and then we wake up very early the next morning to head out on a run. So nice accommodation. We've also done the camping route. This is the first year, which is in La Platana. We camped, beautiful area, got a built-in long drop there, couple of tents. This is only 2 of us running this first year, put a shower in the tree, but really incredible, peaceful places. And that's the same mottled champagne rocks that I showed you a little bit earlier. And the camp that I actually showed you in the previous slide is actually in these bushes, just sitting behind the section. And it's just the most incredible thundering sound. You have the waves crashing against these rocks, all night. It's very hard to sleep. It feels like the entire earth rattles, as they crash against these rocks. But really, really beautiful, special place to be camping. Transkei traffic, there's a lot of traffic. They always get right away. I don't know if anyone can see anything wrong with this picture, but I can tell you that we did take the alternate route. We didn't ask the bull to move, and he's not a 5-legged bull either. I can promise you that. Shame. So we get some incredible sights along the route, but this is some of the trails around the Coffee Bay area, which, as you can see, are spectacular trails to run. I mean, it's just really beautiful. Some of them are hiking trails, some of them are sort of old fisherman trails, some of them are cattle trails, but really nicely manicured. There's no exact route really you need to keep, often keeping the coast on your left or right, depending which way you're going. But there are a couple of different routes you can take if you know where some of the attractions are, and I'll show you a couple of them a little bit later. So you go through quite a few nature reserves along the run. The Mkambati Nature Reserve is quite a famous one, more on the Port Edward, the KZN side of the park. Really, really beautiful. They actually, in the old days, actually put the leopards there. It's such a beautiful place, but they actually cordoned them off and they kept them along this area of coastline. Now it's a nature reserve, got beautiful game running around, lots of beautiful grasslands, beautiful waterfalls like the one you can see here going into the ocean, absolutely spectacular. But there are also other nature reserves we go through, like Uleka, Salaka, Dwesa, Swebe, all reserves that you run through along the way. Some of them we've got to jump over some big fences and do some fancy maneuvers, when we're getting there at different times of day, but it always adds to the adventure. Some of the waterfalls, there's often compulsory jumps that you've got to do off waterfalls, off baboon caves, etc., etc. I actually have got that's the famous pothole jump. I don't know if you saw that, which is that same waterfall that you saw on sort of right going to the coast, just one level up. Now Luke and that, when they ran the Pondo trail, the guys are racing so hard they missed all these jumps, and I'm certainly going to make sure that if he ever comes with us again, we make him backflip or do something crazy, because it's and that drop there into that little pothole, strangely enough, I've never touched the bottom. It is so deep from years and years of just hammering of that water into that hole. It's absolutely incredible, and it's only a meter and a half wide at the bottom, which is quite daunting to jump into a small gap, but it's hell of an experience to do. Baboon Cave up towards Horseshoe Falls, same river, same area, just spectacular things to do. Clean water. You go jumping off there, baboons watch you from the top. Really, really incredible. And there's just a multitude of sort of waterfalls and cascades as you go up this river. So we've often just gone and explored and sort of swum up the river, climbed up waterfalls and gone further and further up. And it's just really, really spectacular. Here's Andrew taking the jump off Baboon Cave. So you can see it's a good jump, but crystal clear water at the bottom, just good fun. and just spectacular. You can see the indigenous forest in those areas, just really, really, really beautiful. Then if you look at the rest of the trail, there's a combination of routes you can take. Like I said, generally keeping the coast on your left or right, depending on which direction you're running. But if it's low tide, you're running along some of the rocky sort of flat areas in the front. Sometimes you're running behind the coastal bush, depending on the wind, etc., etc. So there are a lot of routes and choices you can actually take on that. I've also got the GPX files, and I'm happy to give them to anyone if they want to go and explore. But it's really there's no right or wrong place. You're always going to stumble upon some incredible treasure. Doesn't matter which way you actually go. In terms of waterfalls, now there are apparently only 19 waterfalls in the world that classify as a waterfall. So the one I showed you a little bit earlier in Mkambati doesn't classify as a waterfall. It has to fall a certain amount of meters. And there are only 19 in the world apparently that fall directly into the ocean. Now Mlambakulu is one of those waterfalls that drops off the waterfall bluff. As you can see here, really, really spectacular, beautiful, really iconic landmark that you can see drops. You can walk right underneath that waterfall and get nicely splashed and really enjoy a shower underneath that. There's actually a massive sandbank that's actually developed underneath that with some of the changes in the current weather pattern. So at low tide, you can actually walk on the sand just below the waterfall, which is quite incredible. But that's one of the iconic features. There's another waterfall just further down the bluff. And as you can see on the top grasslands there, that's the type of stuff you're running on. You're running along just rocky grassland type areas, and it's really beautiful. But this is the Secret Falls and Philo Falls, which runs with the Kutwini River, another one of the amazing rivers that sort of you can follow up inland through a lot of cascading waterfalls and rock pools, but also beautiful. And you can see that coastline, it's just sort of jagged and rugged, along the waterfall bluff area, which is really beautiful. A couple of us got a really crazy plan at Spring Low. We were thinking of trying to run along the bottom section of Waterfall Bluff. We'd have to be really fast, and we'd have to have some people who know some rope techniques, because if the tide catches us or the swells pick up, you're going to have to tie yourself onto one of the cliff faces until the tide drops again. So we've spoken to a couple of guys like Rainer Kriesland that are good with ropes, who can tie us to a cliff face to wait the tide out, which would be quite incredible. But as you can see, rocky, beautiful, rugged. I do worry about some big nyogas and snakes that could be sitting along those rocky outcrops. I don't like snakes, and I'm sure there could be some, so we'd have to be a bit cautious with regards to that. Just a couple of different views of those waterfalls, and in that sort of section, you can see the runner standing at the top, of the falls there, looking at from different views. So you can go and run along this top of this sort of escarpment or sort of cliff line, and really just look at different areas. It's just endless exploring that you can actually do, and really spectacular. In terms of locals, it's incredible, and my heart goes out to these people down the Transkei, the Pondo people. They're just humble, gentle, amazing people. They become like family to me. We spend a lot of time with them. My kids see them as brothers and sisters often. They're just like a different group of people often, and it's amazing. And that's why my heart really goes out to trying to support and help them and sort of develop the clinics, and that to really support them, because they're unseen and unheard in many ways. They live in their little rondavels, and they just appreciate everything that you do and whenever you're there, which is really cool. So that's why we do a lot of charity work down there during the COVID sort of period. We sent a lot of maize meal and sort of staples down, because obviously they rely heavily on tourism. There's no tourism, and they're not supporting fishermen and people in the local lodges and cottages. There's no real work anywhere near the villages along the coastline. Doing something like this, support crew is critical. We've got the Wild Child's Africa crew who do all our crewing. Matt Buerta, who lives down the Pondoland area, he does our support. But Bully and Keke on the right-hand side, they drive our vehicles, make sure that there's always sort of food waiting ahead, cold beers. Our tents are set up if they're tents, or lodges are set up, etc. But obviously you can't do this, well, you could do it unsupported, I guess, but it won't be as comfortable getting to the end points without having a nice ice cold beer and a warm change of clothing. So there's always a dog involved, sadly. So this is along last year's route. This is Pondo. Every dog we ever adopt on the Transkei is called Pondo. So, and this dog, funny enough, we picked up at a place called Mouth where we stopped for lunch, and it just followed us, and we tried to chase it and said, we didn't want it to follow us. It swam across a big river at Mouth and kept on following us for Ks and Ks and Ks. And we eventually said, well, we can't get rid of this dog. It kept on following us. Went all the way to Coffee Bay, swam across big rivers. And as we went, we got sponsored that night at the coffee shack, the backpackers. The dog came and slept outside the room that night. And we said, well, geez, this is crazy. Now, what do we do with this dog? And Kobus, one of the guys who did it with us, said, well, no, he's prepared to adopt the dog. It's such a beautiful dog and so loyal. But the next morning, unfortunately, when we tried to get it into the car, just obviously had never seen a car before, freaked out and then ran away. And just sadly, we had already left and started our day next day. But we never saw Pondo again. But my last family trip, we went down to the Transkei, which we go a couple of times a year. We actually found another small Pondo, which looks identical to these. They all look the same. And funny enough, Spurge Flemington from UTD now is a proud owner of Pondo. So when you go there, ask him about Pondo, who we picked up along the Transkei. So really, really incredible dogs. They often follow you. They just look to just accompany you. Didn't really trust us giving them food and the stuff. They sniffed at the energy bars, etc. But yeah, incredible creatures. Eating and drinking along route, we try and support the local lodges as much as we can. Hotels, this last year when we ran in August, it was just in the midst of the COVID breakout initially, so we stopped at all the lodges along the way. This is at the Kroll, along the sort of southern section with Dylan, hell of a character, who lives down there. He's got this amazing resort. He calls it the best burger on the Transkei. I don't know if many other people make burgers, but it is really impressive after about 50 Ks of running, and he serves with a very big beer. Most people serve very big beers down there, but it's all part of the experience. So we get fed like absolute kings. Other times we stop along at cottages. The stop, these top two pictures here is when we stopped at Mouth. Funny enough, when we picked up Pondo, the dog, where we had butternut soup and rolls, and other times we make wraps that we take along with us. We stop at spaza shops and buy some chips or make coffee, etc. But it really is, we make sure it's enjoyable. We eat as much as we can, we drink as much as we can. We're not there to lose weight. We're there to have a lot of good time and have fun and a lot of laughs. At the stops, that's Keke filleting a yellowtail for us. We eat a lot of seafood. The guys pull out all the stops for us, crayfish, oysters, the whole bang shoot. So we make sure that we run and we rough it during the day, but at night we eat like kings and queens. Good fun, good fresh seafood, which followed by a good couple of gin and tonics and beers, which makes it a hell of a lot of fun. There are a couple of famous shebeens along the route. Jabulani Shebeen, this is the Mtendu side. Really, really good fun. They even have chairs where Andrew's sitting at the top here with seat belts. So if you really get out of hand, I think they strap you in to make sure you don't fall off your bar stool. It's really, really good fun, but there's an old tractor there. So we always stop in. Even Luke, I told him he had to stop and have a beer on the Pondo Trail, but I think he was racing too hard. He ran straight past the Shebeen. I took two old ladies, one 60-year-old with stage 4 cancer. She had a court and a shooter at Mtendu Lodge. So I tell you, Luke, I think we should really reconsider a sponsorship. Alex, I don't know, there's something, he's falling short of a couple of parameters. He must drink his beers. But yeah, a lot of fun. But wherever we go, it's a couple of beers. It's fun. We're not there to race. It's not about getting through the day quick. If there's a bottle store, we'll stop and have a beer. We support them. At the coffee shack, you have a coffee and a beer, whatever it is. We try and do it and have a lot of fun, which is really, really, really cool. So it's lots of beers are consumed. Andrew does believe it's the best recovery fuel on the market. So yeah, we make sure we do indulge a little bit. There are also many shipwrecks along the route. It is the wild coast after all, so you run across many sort of old boats, pieces of metal, boilers, tankers, all over the place. It's really, really incredible to see it, and just quite sad to imagine, the people who might have lost their lives, in the process. But it's just littered with these type of wrecks along the way. One of the famous ones, which is the Grosvenor. It wrecked in 1782 at least, and people have tried to dig under the ocean floor, as you can see in that picture, to try and get to the treasures. There's the stories about diamonds, rubies, gold, and etc. in this wreck, but no one's ever been able to get it. People have got a couple of gold coins and sort of cannons and things like that, but no one's ever got the treasure. But there's a tunnel there that people try to dig right under the ocean floor and try and come up underneath the wreck. Never came right. There's a couple of famous expeditions that tried, but you must read up on it. It's incredible, and the sort of scar on the rocks from where they tried to dig is still shown, along that Grosvenor coastline. So just a couple of pictures, and also to show you some of the trails. I can't really show you route profiles, and that's you're running along the coastline, not too much vert, a couple of the hills, as you can see in these type of pictures, but it's combinations of, like I mentioned earlier, sort of fisherman trails, hiking trails, cattle trails, goat trails, etc., etc. Sometimes the trails, sometimes there are no trails, but just absolutely breathtaking, beautiful, beautiful beaches, beautiful grasslands throughout the entire trip. Ferries, a couple of ferries. We prefer people to swim, so we don't like people catching a ferry because that's the worst thing to do. So we generally will always recommend the swim, but there are a couple of places which you mustn't swim. For example, like the Port St. John's sort of crossing, the Mzimvubu, more shark attacks in that area than anywhere else. Don't swim there. As well as going towards the Kai River, not recommended, as well as Mtata River mouth. But other than that, we do a huge amount of swimming, dry bags compulsory. We generally chuck our entire backpack into a dry bag and swim across like that, or else you're going to be very miserable down the line, because everything would be absolutely soaked. Ziplocks do not work, I can guarantee that. A couple of pictures of a couple of the swims. This bottom one in Gazana, which is one of the most dangerous swims we had, was a massive outgoing tide. You couldn't go too far inland. There was a mangrove. We couldn't get across. And eventually we actually managed to get an old canoe and get across the back line to the shoreline. I can tell you, because if we had tried to swim, we would have been washed out to sea, whereas the water just literally gushes out. Some of the other ones are tame, depending on the rainfall that they've had. Sometimes they're deep, sometimes they're shallow, sometimes they're massive. This last year, I was very disappointed. I'd really revved the people up about how much swimming they're going to do, and they did very little. They're quite shallow most of the route, but there is a lot of swimming along the way. As you can see, it's just part of the course. You just got to get to it. I think the longest swim we had is maybe 150 meters. But when the tide's going, that is quite something. Toilets are great. You even poo with a view. As I said, some spectacular sort of long drops along the route. But other than that, just breathtaking coastlines. You can just see it's just absolute trail running heaven, along that coastline. Just the rolling hills, combinations of tracks. Someone put up a hand there. So then there are a couple of iconic sort of land masses that you go past. Cathedral Rock on the left-hand side. That's in Waterfall Bluff, really spectacular, as well as Hole in the Wall. People might have remembered that or recognized that. You're welcome. They're just beautiful landmarks to really take in along the runs. But then a lot of the rest of the route is just spectacular trails, as you can see. Beaches, unspoiled beaches, never any other footprints generally. Most of the beaches we go along sandy grass paths. We go inland in quite a few of the areas, as you can see, over rocky bays. Some areas we're a couple of kilometers inland, as you can see on the left-hand side here, where you're just running beautiful sort of grazed fields, lovely valleys, rivers running through, waterfalls, just really spectacular. This is like trails along that Coffee Bay, the Coffee Bay area. Like I can say, it's just really beautiful flowing trails. A lot of people ride those type of areas. You get the Mana Wild Ride and things like that also happen in that area. So you do share a lot of those trails at different times, but then you also get really rocky beaches, rocky broken up beaches where there've been landslides and all sorts of things. We've got cliffed out a couple of times, which is quite daunting, but just multitude of different things. I mean, along this little rocky section, we almost got cliffed out. It got really bad down the line. It started nice, and we thought, oh, this is beautiful. Let's take the coastal route. But before we knew it, there were massive cliffs above us going towards Mkambati River bungalows, and we had to scale up a cliff in the end, trying to get to the top before the tide came in. So you've got to be careful at times. This last year, as I said, 4 days of solid rains and headwind. You can see with my beard, I think my middle parting disappeared. It just literally blew off my chin. We actually got told the day before by Matt saying this, I recommend you change direction and actually run from Port Edward to Port St. John's, but the logistics were done. We couldn't we couldn't make any changes like that, but we just stuck with it. And for the first time in my life, the weatherman was 100% right. The wind blew into our teeth the entire way. It rained. It was uncomfortable, but we still made the most of it. It was agonizing. I think maybe that's why only 2 of us finished the actual run. And on the last day, the actual wind changed and actually blew from behind for the last 18 Ks as a bit of a consolation. But it was quite something. A couple of other pictures from that trip, just to show you the trails and really, you know, what it's like there. Just once again, some long beaches. A lot of people say, you know, how much beaches? You know, there's not a massive percentage. Maybe 20% of the time you're on some hard trodden beaches. So getting the tides right is important, or else running on soft sand won't be as nice as we're showing with the catalogue going over there. So really trying to get that right is important. Yeah, as I said, combinations between beach running over headlands. You see the jet ski washed up on Monteku Beach here. You don't know whose jet ski it was, but it was pretty wrecked. I hope the fisherman or the jet skier got off somewhere else, but the jet ski is not in good shape. And just showing you some more of the trails, you know, along that area. Just sandy trail paths along, which is really spectacular to see. And it's just on our doorstep. I mean, it's just, you know, AJ was going to drive up from the Cape to come and run this year, but you know, from Joburg, we, you know, on the Transkei in 7 hours, and we're along this coastline, and it really is spectacular and absolutely beautiful to explore. Yeah, explore that coastline. Just some more pictures showing you, you know, that the typical aloe, you know, that you find along that route. So really sadly, we've had to postpone the 2021 Wild Coast Crossing, which is actually supposed to take place next week. Next week we were supposed to start, but unfortunately with the current lockdown regulations, we're not supposed to be traveling, so we can't be seen doing charity work and stuff, and you know, with our professional and even our ambassador relationships and breaking the law. So we've had to postpone it for that reason. You know, we might do something. We've got a couple of record attempts that we might try a bit later on in the year, which we might do along the Pondoland, the coastline, which we might do. But alternatively, we'll have to push it to 2022. The fundraising will carry on. We'll keep on doing it. You know, I'll most certainly be down the Transkei in August to go and explore and then try and get my mojo back after getting COVID, because obviously I'm also, you know, just out of COVID quarantine and that at the moment as well. And I'm not able to run as freely as I'd like to. So all in all, yeah, we had to postpone it and push it out a year. But yeah, that's effectively the Wild Coast Crossing. And that's what it's about. It's about just a bunch of guys and girls, whoever wants to be involved, running across, trying to uplift the community as a result, sharing our love for trail running and seeing amazing places, but making a difference while doing it. And that is all I had to share with you today. So I don't know if there are any questions. I see there's a funny name with a hand up, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I don't know what that is either. Trying to figure out. But that was awesome. Thank you so much, Reese. Oh, Alex has a question.
Thanks, Reese. Yeah, that looks amazing. I've actually got 2 questions. So one, okay, so I had a mate who moved back to East London. That's where he was from. And I was talking to
sorry, Alex, we can't hear you clearly. I can hear you, I think, more from Colleen's microphone than yours. I can't, so maybe speak through Colleen's microphone, because I can't hear on yours at all.
Put yours on mute.
Can you hear me?
It's perfect now.
Okay, so I had a mate who was from East London. He moved back there. Whenever he used to tell me that he goes for sort of weekends away down the Transkei way, he stressed that they would go with like security that looks over them and that type of thing. But you never kind of mentioned that once, and it seems really safe from your trip. But do you ever have any security issues, or is there anything you need to be sort of aware of?
Yeah, so we've never had issues, Alex. So I mean, we've done it now twice, right? So we've done, you know, both ways. We've never had issues, but if you ever were going to have an issue, it is more on the East London side. So the Coffee Bay, wherever there are developments, wherever there's, industry, and that's why I'm so against having that on the Pondoland side. You know, as soon as you have that type of development, you just start getting that crime aspect coming in, you know, the petty crime around the hole in the wall. For example, the first year we wanted to camp at the hole in the wall, we thought, wow, what an incredible spot to stop and actually camp. And we're just told, don't do it. You're going to be hassled. You're going to be, you know, haggled for money, etc., etc. So that southern section, I think, you've got to be a little bit careful. We've never had issues. We've only had good encounters with people. Maybe we catch them sort of unaware in that. The first year we actually ran through some villages at night, which wasn't ideal. We sort of underestimated the time it would take. And then we had more issues with dogs and things like that, because we were running, and naturally a dog seeing a headlight and they've never seen people running through a village, they're not going to enjoy that. But we've never had issues. But I can tell you now, on the Pondoland side, that's where it's as safe as houses. You know, okay. Fort St. John's, the other way, where there's development, where there's civilization, like we see in Durban and all these different areas, that's where you have the problems. So I'd always be cautious. I wouldn't go alone, but in groups. But we've never ever had a problem at all. But our holidays on the Pondoland side, you leave things all over the place and there's no issue whatsoever. But the other side, you can get issues.
Okay, and then a couple more questions. So you talk about you're going to carry on the fundraising and all of that. I mean, what is that fundraising? Do you have sort of formal things in place?
Yeah, so we do, Alex. So we've got, you know, registered charity, Pillars of Hope, that does all the fundraising for that area. So, you know, my wife years ago set up a registered charity with the proper registrations, etc. So everyone gets tax certificates and things like that. You know, because we're an outreach family. We do a lot of work, whether it's in Lesotho in the past or down the Transkei or locally here. So we've got a proper charity that's set up that raises funds. We also raised funds this year through Give and Gain. We had to partner. People are quite lazy trying to do transfers and stuff into the actual charity's bank account. So we also partnered with Give and Gain. And very similar to what the Rhino Peak Challenge does with Spurs Flemington. I mean, he was supposed to run with us. You know, people just contribute, you know, towards it, and every cent goes directly to you know, building the clinics, or we've upgraded schools and things in the past. So it is done in a formal but informal way as well. It's just we want to do it through the right channels and make sure people can get tax certificates. But you know, every. But sorry,
Reese, is that sort of they sponsoring you around these runs, or is it just general you're approaching corporates?
Yeah, so the run is one of the ways of creating awareness, right? So as I said in the beginning, you know, where there's three sort of pillar approach. One of them was awareness. So the run is to try and gain sponsorships and sort of contributions towards the charity, but also to create awareness. But we also approaching, you know, people like the Oppenheimers locally here, Rothschild, et cetera, to get contributions to assist us, you know, with it. So even now that the run is postponed for this year, it doesn't change the need of the people of the Transkei and of the Pondoland in particular. So we will continue getting people to contribute towards that, regardless of the run. The run is just a very nice way of bringing, you know, highlighting the area, showing the beauty of it, you know, sort of putting a spotlight on the people and the incredible environment.
Okay. And then just last question, when you say maybe join us for 2022, like, is that also run quite kind of like informally? And I'm talking also about costs and that, or like, do you put together, you know, come and join us and the cost is X and this is taken care of, or is it more just come along, I don't know, wing it kind of thing?
Yeah, good question. So it's very informal. So I naturally set it up. I spend my time sort of putting it together, sorting out the logistics, etc. A lot of the trip is sponsored by Wild Child Africa, the people who do our logistics behind it. They pay for a lot of the logistics and then the food and the accommodation behind it. But when there are costs that are incurred, whether there's carpooling or whether there's, you know, a couple of cases of beers we need, you know, taken along, we just generally chuck the bills in sort of a pot, and we just split it by the amount of runners. So, you know, the last couple of years it's cost people very little, but we want people who want to join need to take hands with us in terms of trying to, you know, raise awareness and also try and build, you know, the sponsorship, the donations, etc. So we don't want people just coming for a freebie and running around the coastline saying, well, that's the cheapest trip or adventure I've ever had. They need to take part and say, well, yes, you know, I'm going to try and make a difference, and I believe what we're trying to do here, along the Pondoland coastline, and try and take partnership with the fundraising effort. So that is a prerequisite, because a lot of people want to do it. So this year, we had Martin Malherbe wanted to do it. I know it's a shame he had challenges this year, but I know Grosvenor at times was quite keen. We've had AJ was going to do it this year. Rainer Kriesel was going to do it, but he also had COVID, so he was also quite concerned about that. But we'll take anyone who can run the distance and add value in terms of the camaraderie, the fun, because you want to have a laugh. You don't want someone coming along there thinking they're going to be served. We're going there, we're missioning, but we're trying to uplift the community at the same time. So the costs, a lot of people said, what's the entry fee? There's no entry fee. And maybe that could change in future, saying, well, this is the entry fee, and the entry fee goes to the charity, as an example. But at the moment, because it's a small thing, we just divide whatever cost there may be, and that's the way it's done.
Yeah, really cool. Thanks.
Yeah, but the costs are lower. We keep it low, and the local lodges and sort of places really look after us, and they love seeing us, and they feed us, and they do incredible things, which is really, really cool and special.
Yeah.
But you need to be able to cover those days, right? So I mean, they're long days. 10 to 12 hours of running a day is long. It's a long time on the feet. But this year we also had those takeout points where, for example, my wife was keen to run like the 30 or 40 Ks, the second half or the first half, which we might do next year, because then we can increase the amount of people who can do it, and maybe they'll be shuttled to the start or shuttled to the finish from that point. Which would be nice, because more people fundraising it makes it more impactful potentially. But we don't want it to become so big that logistically it becomes a challenge, and it loses the beauty of just being a raw, rugged type thing. So we'll have to watch that in future to see how we approach it. Cool.
I'm done.
Any other questions?
Two participants raised their hand. Steve.
Hi, Reese. Yeah, this was amazing. Sure, I didn't realize how beautiful that part of the world is. I've only visited briefly, but sure, your pictures are absolutely amazing. One thing is just a comment. I just ironically just finished reading this book. I don't know if you've come across it.
I haven't.
It's called Hope, a Goat in a Hospital. And it's about, I actually know the brother of the guy who wrote it. He's a doctor who started a clinic in Zitulele. It's become a famous hospital in the Coffee Bay area. They've just sort of grown it from scratch over the last, going on 20 years now. But I just wondered if you'd come across that, because they're also quite involved in sort of community development work in that area. So that was just the one question. The other one was more running related. What shoes did you use for which Ultra shoes did you use for this? Would you recommend for this kind of terrain and this kind of length of run?
Yeah, so I'm not aware of that book, but I'll definitely go and look it up. Yeah, so there's a lot of development on that side, that southern side of the Transkei, but not much on the Pondoland, and that's why we're focusing on that side, because it's just sort of the forgotten area, I guess. But in terms of shoes, yeah, I mean, I use them all there. I think this last year I actually ended up running in my Olympus a lot. It was so wet and muddy and sloshy. That Vibram Mega Grip was fantastic along those muddy black mud type areas. But yeah, I used on the last trip, I used my Timp, my Lone Peaks, and my Olympus. But because it's quite soft underfoot, a lot of the areas on the sandy type areas, the Lone Peaks are a great shoe. Great shoe for that. I think I would have used my new Lone Peaks this year. I think they're great. Would have been great in that area. The rocky, harder areas, yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but it's more rounded, tarred, beaten rocks when you're running over it. So they're quite smooth. Some sort of the volcanic rock type stuff, which is quite horrible underfoot, but generally, yeah, I've used all the shoes, but I think the Lone Peaks must be the right shoe for for the Transkei as a whole.
Anyone else? No?
just thanks, Reese, for sharing. Epic, well done, and also commend you guys on the way you're doing it. Just your whole approach, looking after the community. That's really amazing to see. But we will have a chat. I'm super keen.
No, we'd love to have you with us, Grosvenor. You'd love it, man.
Awesome. Thanks, Reese. Alex. Thanks, guys.
Luckily, you guys are a shoe company, not a technology company. It's doing well.
We'll improve. Have a good evening.
No, thanks, man. And like I said, people can reach out to us, to me, if they want to know more, join us, etc. They're welcome to reach out. We were actually going to do a documentary type thing on it this year. Taryn's husband was going to run with us and actually film a lot of it and try and put it into a bit of a short video, which would have been really cool. But yeah, next year is we have another chance, unless we do this record attempt in August along the Pondoland coastline, which might happen. Just got to see if I find my lungs and my heart post-COVID before I commit to that.
Cool.
Cheers. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks for the time, Reese.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.